One of the first videos on this channel to ever blow up was a video titled "The Insanity of Fire Force's Power System." This video is terrible. As expected, my 5th video ever is not the best, but that video is also full of incomplete explanations and an overall shallow analysis of a power system that I claimed to be my favorite at the beginning of said video. So today, in order to rectify my past mistakes and get rid of the pit of regret that remains in my soul from making that video, we will be taking a deep dive into Fire Force's power system. Before we get started, it'd be great if you dropped a like on the video for the algorithm and subscribe to see future Fire Force content here on the channel. Major manga spoilers past this point. Before we get into the meat of this power system, I need to talk about Adola. Adola is an alternate realm, likened to be something similar to Hell, that is directly linked to the collective unconscious of humanity. Within Adola lies the doppelgangers. For every human in the world, there is a doppelganger in Adola, and when a doppelganger tries to invade their human counterpart's body, that human will turn into an infernal, which we will get to later. However, this isn't the only way a doppelganger can manifest. Throughout the series, it's shown that when a doppelganger tries to invade a pyrokinetic, it seemingly ends up in the human world as a completely separate entity. Sometimes. In the case of Lieutenant Conroe and Captain Burns, their doppelgangers manifested as demon infernals, while characters like Amaterasu got a doppelganger that manifested as Iris, a completely separate human being. In Shinra's case specifically, his doppelganger took over his consciousness and controlled his body. A doppelganger that has a human body will act in a way that reflects how the collective unconscious sees them. For example, when Shinra was possessed, he acted like a delinquent since most people see him as such in the human world, or how Benimaru's doppelganger is the personification of what the strongest is supposed to be. A doppelganger's human counterpart does not have to be alive for it to manifest, seeing as when Hibachi Shinmon's doppelganger manifested despite the real one being long gone. Adola is also home to bugs that can turn people into infernals, but I'll get to that in a bit. When a person is graced with the flames of Adola, they have what is called an Adola burst. The Adola burst is described as the unsullied or pure flame because it comes directly from Adola itself. Pyrokinetics with a connection to Adola are able to communicate with each other through a phenomenon called Adola links. Adola links can be used to communicate with Adola burst users, sending them messages or showing them events that have recently occurred. When a pyrokinetic without an Adola burst connects to Adola, it comes at a cost. In exchange for seeing the other world, they have to bear a stigmata. In the cases of Captain Hagu and Conroe, they received scars across their faces, and in the cases of Captain Burns and Joker, they lost their right and left eyes respectively. As the name of the series suggests, the power system in Fire Force is completely filled with pyrokinetics, and in order to create a structure and diverse set of abilities within the series, the pyrokinetics are split into 4 generations. The first generations are the Infernals. An Infernal is created when a regular unpowered person is consumed by the flames or taken over by their doppelganger. Infernalization happens to any random person at any random time and cannot be prevented in any way, so it's basically certain death. In most cases, when a person becomes an infernal, they will lose all sense of self and rampage until they either burn out and die or are put to rest by a fire soldier. There are some cases when the victim has a strong enough will to stop themselves from rampaging in order to not hurt their loved ones or the people around them. Infernals gain superhuman abilities in the form of enhanced durability, strength, and basic pyrokinesis, as they are able to control the fire generated by their bodies. In order to kill an infernal or put it to rest, their core must be pierced, whether that's by a weapon, a hand, or another pyrokinetic ability. Killing it will cause its body to turn to ash. There are also different kinds of infernals. Basic infernals are of course the weakest kind and are usually pretty easy to deal with. Stronger characters such as Benimaru are able to one-shot these with their bare hands without the use of pyrokinesis. Also, Infernos can take the form of animals, more specifically dogs called Hellhounds. Slightly above basic Infernos are Sentient Infernos. These are still almost exactly the same as basic Infernos, but the victim keeps their sentience and has complete and total control of their thoughts and actions. However, they are only slightly stronger than their basic counterparts. Taking another step above that, there are Demon Infernos. These are easily identifiable by the horn or horns on their head and are far more stronger and more durable than a regular Infernal. Demon Infernals are usually mindless like their basic counterparts, but there have been cases where a Demon Infernal will keep all sentience, as seen with Tempeh in the Chinese Peninsula arc. In those cases, the Demon Infernal is slightly stronger due to having control over their thoughts and actions. Artificial Infernals are made when a bug from Adola pierces a person's core. These bugs can produce either a regular Infernal or a Demon Infernal, it's kind of random. Giant Infernals do exist, but only under the control of the Pillar Protector Ritsu. Ritsu's ability, Necropyro, allows her to control the dead. With this, she can fuse dead humans with Infernos to create a Giant Infernal. Giants are obviously massively more powerful than basic Infernals, but not quite as powerful as Demon Infernals. Giants will also sometimes have multiple cores that serve as weak points before hitting the core in the middle. Lastly, for first generations, we have Titanic Infernals. These are born from the stone pillars that appear before the Second Great Cataclysm and are absolutely fucking massive. After a while of people randomly exploding, humanity started to adapt to the flames and evolve, and thus the second and third generations were born. Second generations cannot produce fire themselves, but have the ability to alter the properties of any existing flame. There isn't a base set of abilities for second generations besides control fire, since they all have their own specialties, and the property altering abilities for a second generation are not quite what you think. Second gens can control the strength of a flame, whether it's making them stronger, weaker, or completely extinguishing them. Character specific abilities are an entire different story, however. The easiest way to explain these is to give short breakdowns of a few abilities. On top of her extremely masterful control of flames over a wide distance, Maki Oze can give her fire sentience. Yes, living, kind of speaking, fire. Kareem Flam can turn fire into sound, and then sound into ice. Yes, that's insane, and no, I'm not going to explain the logistics behind it because it would take too much time in this video. A second gen's abilities are not just limited to fire itself, however. Small fires, such as sparks, can be controlled as seen in Hinawa's velocity control ability, and Karon is able to absorb kinetic energy, convert it into heat energy, and then output it as fire. The existence of second gens and third gens does not exactly mean one is superior or inferior to the other, since second gens are able to control the fire of a third generation's ignition abilities, being able to apply their property control to their enemy's fire. It should also be noted that it is possible for a flame to be too strong for a second generation to extinguish completely, but it will still be susceptible to property alteration. Third generations can ignite and control their own fire, however, their control isn't as fine-tuned as a second gen and is restricted to simply controlling the fire instead of altering its properties, as well as being able to control their flame's output level. Third generation's abilities are not limited to just shooting fire or even using fire itself. In the case of Haumea and Arthur, their abilities are more electricity based, with Haumea being a true electrokinetic and Arthur being able to superheat his flames into a plasma blade with electric properties. Characters like Captain Burns, Ogun, and Tamaki can use their flames to enhance themselves, giving them increased strength, agility, speed, and durability. And in the case of Panko Pat, he can buff his allies with his flames. That's not all, however. Here's a lightning round of third generation abilities, since there are simply too many to explain. heating up the cells in a person's face to change their appearance, creating mirages of yourself, creating weapons such as scythes, knives, and bombs, or creating magnetism from heat. As powerful as being a third generation sounds, there is a drawback that is specific to them. The fire a third gen uses comes at the cost of the oxygen in their body. The less oxygen they have, the harder it is to use their pyrokinetic abilities. When a pyrokinetic uses all of the oxygen in their body, they become subject to the process of overheating. When a pyrokinetic is overheating and they continue to use their fire, they become inflicted by a condition called tephrosis. Tephrosis turns a pyrokinetic skin, whatever part of the body they use their flames with, into ash and makes their pyrokinetic ability difficult or even impossible to use anymore. In the case of Conroe, he's unable to use his abilities at all, but in the case of Corono, his tephrosis is his ignition ability, and we don't know what his original ability even was. A certain few third generations can use a technique called hysterical strength. A pyrokinetic is usually limited to using 30% of their potential. Hysterical strength enables them to use 100% of their potential, turning their fire blue. The way to activate hysterical strength is to feel the press of death when pushed to the utmost limit in a fight. The press of death has a strengthened version used exclusively by Arthur called Steeled for Death, which allowed him to cut the planet in half. In very rare instances, and by very rare I mean quite literally only one, a person will possess both second and third generation abilities. As you can imagine, the person who wields both these powers, Benimaru, is massively powerful as he can generate his own fire and control it with far more precision than a regular third gen, while also being able to control his opponent's flames. All pyrokinetics, not just third generations, have a natural heat tolerance that allows them to use their abilities without burning themselves. It should be noted that there is an example of someone having a higher than usual heat tolerance in Tamaki, but no example of someone having a lower than usual tolerance. Fourth generations are, well, the most powerful. Unlike with the lack of superiority between second and third generations, fourth generations are the strongest with no question. That's why there's so little of them. Fourth generation abilities defy the laws of physics entirely, granting them godly abilities. And the use of the word godly is not an overstatement. When a third generation Adola burst user, it has to be both, receives grace from a godly being in Adola, they gain a fourth generation ability. Sho Kusakabe can stop time by controlling the heat of the universe, Inka Kasakatani can see the future of all heat and fire, no matter how faint it is, meaning she can't get hit, and Shinra Kusakabe can reverse time by flying faster than the speed of light. However, it is possible to gain abilities that should classify as fourth generation without having an Adola burst. During the events leading up to the second Great Cataclysm, the world of Adola becomes closer to Earth, and the powers of all pyrokinetics are greatly increased. In the case of a couple of the strongest characters, those being Arthur and Benimaru, their connection to Adola is so great that they become able to warp reality. Benimaru makes the ocean look like it's straight out of a storybook and warps the moon to be the one from Soul Eater with his fire, and Arthur becomes able to manifest anything he wants. Literally anything, including but not limited to stuff like the ability to breathe in space and creating physical video game like text out of thin air. The most interesting thing about the universe of Fire Force is that it technically has a second power system due to its ending and its connection to Soul Eater. If you'd like to know about that one, I suggest watching my deep dive into Soul Eater's power system. That's it for this one.
Lately I'm feeling so cool. Yeah, come and get a taste of the hip soul food. Spice up the animal with neo haiku. While soul goes to school, way slash kung fu.